Thanks, Ava, for joining me today. To start, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Ava. I'm a current senior at the University of Minnesota, and I'm studying finance and entrepreneurial management. Really interested in the entrepreneurial space and the startup space, especially on the investing side. So I've worked not only at Atland Ventures, but at a few other funds, one locally and one an impact venture. And I've also have some experience at startups as well, and really do love the space and excited to be here.
Awesome. Thanks for joining me. Really excited to chat with you today about Atland Ventures. To start, maybe how did you first learn about that organization?
Yeah, so it was my fall semester of sophomore year. I was sitting in finance class, and one of our previous managing partners came in to kind of introduce Atland and what the fund was. I, for a very long time, didn't think I knew somewhat of what venture capital was, but I didn't think it was a space I could break into until I was a lot older and a lot richer. And actually was pleasantly surprised by kind of the fund itself. Went to an info session that night, applied, got in, and it's been an amazing experience.
Cool. And before we start on the questions, I just wanted to kind of go through some background information just so the audience has full context. So Atland Ventures is a fund run by University of Minnesota students. It's a $1 million fund that deploys $25,000 checks at a time. The fund invests in startups solving problems faced by digitally native generations. Is there any other important background information that you think people should know about the org?
Yeah, so one interesting thing about Atland that I like to share is the fact that even though our fund is run by students that attend the University of Minnesota, the fund itself is actually not directly affiliated with the University of Minnesota. We're our own LLC, which allows us to be student-run and student-owned, which basically means that students have complete autonomy over the investments we make. We run very similarly to a normal venture capital firm. We have limited partners that we raise capital from, and students have the potential to get carry-on investment as well. So I think that's one thing that makes us unique and sets us apart from other student-run funds. So it's interesting.
Cool. And I want to start off with questions just directed towards helping founders who are considering applying for investment from Atland Ventures. First question is just what do you guys look for in startups before investing?
Yeah, so looking at startups, I think when it comes to our thesis, while rising industries such as sustainability, clean tech, AI, anything around those ends, even though we're pretty industry agnostic, is attractive. It's also really interesting for us to look at spaces that are being disrupted by some sort of technological innovation that might have been stagnant for a while. And in addition to kind of around the thesis, we're obviously looking at team. I think that's something you hear a lot in the VC space, specifically individuals who are really excited and passionate about what they're building and have really that niche and experience in building what they're creating. I think that's something we look at a lot, as well as market and product. I think those are two really important things. Like, is there a large enough market? Is the product filling a need in that market? So yeah, those are just some basic pieces that we look at when looking at companies.
Cool. And the fund is focused on startups solving problems faced by digitally native generations. What's an example of maybe one of those problems that you're seeing and a startup that's solving it? Feel free to either mention a portfolio company or a startup that you're kind of tracking.
Yeah, so I think a lot of our portfolio companies really do show a great picture of this. I think that it also shows the diversity of the different angles that you can take when looking at that specific thesis. One that comes to mind right away is Cohort. So the problem they're solving is kind of in the art space. So traditionally, artists, in order to get their kind of art scene, would be through like a gallery, but galleries only really provide access or provide the ability for a small percentage of artists to display their work, and obviously charge like a high commission. And I think when it comes to social media, think of like an Instagram or a Pinterest, it's really popularity that wins rather than individual taste. So Cohort is a social network that's using a vertical marketplace to really help individuals discover, interact with artists and creators, as well as kind of their communities in a collaborative setting. And they really have the goal of really increasing representation, transparency, community, all those things. And as a result, they're really helping with the monetization and the sharing of the art, and making it a lot more accessible compared to alternatives such as those galleries, Instagram or Pinterest. I think that's a great example of kind of a company that's taking a space and creating innovation within it to make the technology more accessible and individualized.
Nice. I really like that example. And what does the Atland Ventures investment process look like? Like, how do deals get done?
Yeah, so traditionally there's basically around 4 to 5 diligence teams, I would say, around 4 diligence teams per semester. On those diligence teams, there's around 3 to 4 analysts, and that's really where deals are being sourced, and that's where due diligence is happening. So once one of those teams is looking at a company that they're really excited about and think could be a great potential investment, what they'll do is then create a memo, and then they'll send that memo out to the fund. The fund will kind of give a preliminary opinion, ask some questions, and then that team will get some of those questions answered. And then ultimately they will so usually each Friday we have kind of a huge group investment discussion meeting. And that's where the team will present the company. And then if it's above an 80% in favor vote of that company at the end of that meeting, we'll proceed with an investment. So a few steps there, but it's been working for us pretty well.
And how does the founder, I guess, get on your radar? Like, do they like submit information through your website? They reach out to one of these teams, or I guess like how are you interfacing with the founder?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of our sourcing methods either come through personal networks or come through like creative abilities. So I know one unique tool that we have within the fund is access to PitchBook. That's something that the university provides us. We source companies off there. We look at local accelerator programs. I know me and a few other individuals who work at local venture funds are able to see some deal flow through there. Otherwise, we get creative in kind of how we reach out and ask, and have found success in sourcing deals in a lot of different ways.
Cool. And what would you say is like Atland Ventures value add to startups in his portfolio? Like, how do you convince a founder who's maybe raising money from other investors to want to take your check?
Yeah, another great question. I think our value add is really diverse and can be seen in a lot of different ways. One kind of interesting way that I think our value add can be seen is through validation of the market. So obviously a lot of the companies or problems that these startups are solving are relevant, either solving a problem specifically felt by us or a problem that we have experience in. So demonstrating to other potential investors that we invested in them is a way to validate that market. Our memos that we write are pretty in depth and very kind of elaborate because we're a learning fund, which means that we put a lot of work and diligence into the companies and the memos that we write. So they're able to sometimes share those memos to other potential investors to decrease the barrier of entry. We've had a lot of fund members act as interns to some of our portfolio companies. We're always happy to hop on calls to give product or market feedback, not only to the companies we invest in, but companies that we look at as well that maybe we didn't pass. And the student body is a really huge asset for Atland, our connection to the University of Minnesota student body. And we've been able to fill out a lot of surveys and do a lot of market research through the opinions of that student body as well. And we've been able to get really great response rates. So pretty diverse, and we're kind of happy to get creative with those methods as well.
Awesome. And how many investments are you guys making per semester? And I know you raised the fund in, I think, 2019. I think it was a $1 million fund. Like, how much do you have left to deploy?
Yeah, I would say the amount of investments we make per semester can differ. So I would say on average 1 to 3 investments per semester. And we have around 20% of our fund left for initial checks and follow-ons, but we're really excited about the second fund that we have in the works to be able to continue that mission and allow other students to have this experience moving forward as well.
Cool. And I know you mentioned earlier that Atland Ventures is sort of like a separate entity. But you guys are University of Minnesota students. I'm kind of curious, like what percentage of your investments are actually in people affiliated with the university? So faculty or students or alums?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And actually, while we've looked at companies created by UMN affiliates, whether that be alumni or other individuals, we actually don't have any investments in our current portfolio that are associated with University of Minnesota affiliates. However, it's definitely something that we would consider and look at. Just so happens to be that's not the case. I will say a lot of not only our student body, but a lot of our mentors and advisors are associated and faculty at the University of Minnesota and are really helpful in kind of our diligence strategies and stuff. So we do utilize network very well in that way.
Cool. And what do you see as like the biggest opportunities to just improve how Atland Ventures works with founders and supports founders?
Yeah, I think that like anything within our fund, we really do try to get creative in the way that we learn and improve our strategies. And we're always looking for ways to get better. I think this includes in the portfolio side as well. I think I don't want to give for that reason, I don't want to give like a solid answer, but I will say we've done like random things too. So for example, I know like last summer, we had a group of students meet one of our portfolio companies at the Minnesota State Fair and basically exchange app downloads for corn, which might sound in theory like that's funny, right? Like an interesting strategy, but they actually ended up getting like a ton of downloads that way, and we were able to get in the field and help them out then. And like I said, we've been able to really leverage like our student access a lot with the university, but whatever ways we can help like founders get creative in that way, or help provide basically some sort of help or be an asset to them, we do try to get creative with that, and we're happy to try new things.
Cool. App downloads for corn. I've never heard that one before, but I think that'll probably stick with me. And then the second part, would love to transition just more towards questions to help students who want to join the Atland Ventures internal team. Can you give an overview of like the application process for internal team members?
Yeah, so the application process traditionally happens over a 3-step process. That includes written and interview steps. And through each of those processes, we really dwindle down the applicant pool and ultimately choose our final class. And the recruitment process happens each semester. So we take in a new class in the fall and in the spring.
Cool. And what are you looking for during that application interview process?
Yep. So we really are looking for people who are super passionate about the entrepreneurial space. I think that their interest and their ability to critically think is two of the most important factors. And it's really not relevant on what they're studying. So we have students in the fund who are studying normal, like traditionally associated majors with entrepreneurship, like finance or entrepreneurship in general. And we have individuals who are studying computer science, data analytics. We just had somebody join from the College of Food and Ag. So we're really experimental, and we love having that diversity of perspective within the fund. And I'll add on to that, like, we don't expect you to know everything coming in. Obviously, it's an unfamiliar space. So we really value like passion and your ability to think the most.
Cool. And then like, as you onboard new team members, how do you train them to give like good advice, be helpful, and actually like source these deals?
Yeah, I will say that Atland is unique in the sense that we actually offer a 4-credit course by being involved in Atland that's run through the University of Minnesota and is taught by an upperclassman. So that happens to be me right now, but that changes each semester as well. And that's when we teach you about thesis, due diligence, memos, how to talk with founders, how to source, how to do follow-ons, like all that stuff in more of a lecture setting. And then we have a group of directors that we pair an analyst with, like I mentioned earlier, and that director is able to mentor them through the tangibility of doing due diligence and sourcing companies and conducting founder calls. And I would say that those two strategies, in a mix with just the overall support of the fund, who's very welcoming, and we always love seeing those new individuals thrive, it's a great environment to get people to be very valuable investment people in the community.
Cool. And then last question, is there anything I didn't ask about that you think is important to know for either a founder considering investment from you guys or someone who wants to join the internal team?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I said earlier, like, really does stand, especially kind of on the student side. So for the students, really, we do value your passion and your authenticity for the space over your knowledge. It's not a space that's super tapped when you're young. So please don't let that be a factor that would stop you from applying. We really do actually see that as an asset, that people have those diverse perspectives and want to learn. From the founder side, I think like what I mentioned earlier, our thesis is it's broad in the sense of like the industries we invest in. We also do invest nationwide, so we're not limited to Minnesota or the Midwest. And we're always open to having conversations and kind of providing product feedback. So please reach out if you're interested.
Cool. Thanks so much, Ava, for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you. It's been great.